Have you ever seriously wondered, how much are you worth to the people you love most? Did you lose yourself trying to please people who never saw your sacrifice? I'm Marjorie. I just dropped $67,680, my entire life savings, on my only son's wedding. And then I got the email. 3 lines. 3 lines that felt like a bullet to the chest. Mom, just watch on Zoom. The vibe here. It's just not you. Can you imagine? That was the dagger for a mom who skipped meals and wore threadbare clothes for decades just to raise them right. But this time I didn't cry. I nodded. And in that chilling silence, I hit the cancel button on every single cent. The second their castle of happiness crashed, mine began. That's the moment I started my journey to reclaim my own dignity. This story will leave you breathless, gut-punched, and completely unable to look away. If you've ever been treated like a walking ATM by your own family, stop scrolling and hit subscribe right now. Let's build a community where respect is non-negotiable. Tell me what you think below. Team Marjorie or way too harsh in the comments. The ancient laptop was wheezing in my cold kitchen. The screen glared. Email from Michael. My heart instantly started doing the rumba. Just an hour ago, he was gushing on the phone. Mom, Rachel and I picked out the bridal party gifts. Your idea was gold. But that joy was already tainted. It started the day my only son said, ever so gently, "Just wire the money." "Mom, we've got it from here." His voice was soft, but it chilled me to the bone. I never thought the child I practically broke myself to raise was about to deliver a blow like this. I'm Marjorie Ellis, 61, a single mom. The brown cardigan I'm wearing? It's faded and worn thin on the sleeves where I always wipe my hands after a shift. I bought it on clearance a decade ago, and it's become my second skin. It's seen every biting Massachusetts winter, and it's a silent monument to everything I gave up for myself. This tiny house in Massachusetts has seen me do it all. Cleaning houses, gardening, pet sitting for strangers. All I wanted was a better shot for Michael and Samantha. Since their dad passed, I had one single, solitary dream that one day they'd look at me and say, "Mom, you're the reason we made it." That dream was about to shatter. Weeks ago, I forked over the first check, $36,450. Every last dime of my emergency fund went toward my son's high society wedding. And then there was Helen, the bride's mother, who actually sneered, "Marjorie, you just handle the budget. We'll take care of the ambiance." I bit my tongue raw, telling myself it was all for Michael's happiness. But that so-called happiness apparently had no room for me. I clicked the email open. My heart went completely frigid. I could hear the old CPU fan whirring like a tiny, angry hornet in the silent kitchen. My chest tightened with the cold. My hands were shaking so bad I had to lock my thumb over my index finger just to keep the mouse steady. No, "Hi Mom," no greeting. Just the clinical subject line, "Wedding update." The words "live stream," "not a good fit," and "elegant atmosphere" ripped through me. And then the final knife twist. The sentence that proved he was watching me suffer. Same as there, right? Signature, Michael Ellis. Ice cold. What happens when a mother realizes she's just an ATM with a pulse? When love is measured by heartless email lines? I reread it. My fingers trembled violently. My heart was breaking into 1,000 shards of glass. I looked in the reflection of the dark screen, my silver-streaked hair, my worn, rough hands, and I finally understood. I was a spare part. My breath hitched, like I'd just sprinted a mile through snow. Memories rushed in like a tidal wave. The nights I skipped dinner to buy Michael those sneakers. The whispered laughter of the maid when I picked up Samantha. That freezing winter day I walked through snow to hand over tuition money, only to hear, "Mom, don't come up to the dorm." Tears burned, but I absolutely refused to let them fall. Helen had once openly declared, "Marjorie is not suited for the sophisticated atmosphere." Michael had looked at his shoes. Samantha stayed silent, like I didn't exist, but they were wrong. Dead wrong. This time my body didn't tremble. My eyes were bone dry. But inside, everything, my faith, my hope, my unconditional love, shattered into 1,000 sharp, jagged pieces. Still, I sat there rock solid, unmoving. My cold fingers typed 5 words that felt like steel. Sure, have a great day. The jarring, high-pitched ring of my cell phone tore through the silence just as I was closing the laptop. Samantha's name flashed. I hit answer. My daughter's voice flooded the line. No greeting, just frantic, casual urgency. Mom, you need to Venmo me the last $2,500 for Michael's tux. It's an emergency. He's too busy to deal with it. A horrific conflict raged inside me. My chest felt like it was going to implode. Part of me wanted to reach through the phone and comfort my daughter, but a louder part wanted to scream that her perfectly timed callousness was the final, devastating stab into my already bleeding heart. Pure maternal love and absolute crushing disappointment were wrestling in my gut, leaving me totally paralyzed. The moment I desperately needed a hug, my only daughter only cared about my dwindling bank account. That realization cut the final cord. No argument, no sobs. Just decisive action. My finger hit the end call button. The sound disappeared, leaving me in the deadly silence of the cold kitchen. The pain was now sharp, a portrait painted in blood. I simply couldn't comprehend how the children I once rocked to sleep had become this utterly ruthless. That's when the knock came. Linda, my best friend of 20 years, walked in, her face etched with concern. I just passed the coffee shop and saw Helen talking to her friend. You need to hear this. She paused, then spoke so softly. Helen said, "This kind of elegant wedding? It's not really for people like Marjorie. She just needs to stick to her role." Linda's words confirmed everything I had just read in that email. I looked at her and gave a small nod. No commentary needed. The ugly truth was finally, totally exposed. But the most chilling part wasn't her words. It was the sudden, sickening realization. The biggest betrayer in my life was the person I was yesterday, the one who was cruelest to her own dignity. I closed the laptop and stepped back into the sharp Massachusetts cold. The sound of my shoes was slow, deliberate, the quiet beat of a new heart. I still went to my cleaning shift that day, but a decision was already smoldering, a decision that was about to rock their entire world. That was the day I stopped believing in sacrifice. That was the day this mother woke up. And that, my friend, was just the overture to the storm that was coming. I had no idea that hitting that cancel button was only the first domino. It would trigger a chain of events that even I, in my deepest pain, never saw coming. And the real secret about that 67,180? That was the twist that shocked me more than my own son's email. That morning, I walked in silence, traversing the snow-covered street to my cleaning shift. The Massachusetts winter air was brutally cold. My breath condensed into frost, but I paid it no mind. One question spun in my head. How did we end up like this? 20 years. 2 decades spent breathing the smell of bleach and dust from other people's homes. After my husband passed away, stability was the only thing I could offer my children. I thought these silent sacrifices would be repaid with gratitude. I was wrong. The memories, lunches that were just a scrap of bread, shaking my head to refuse coffee invitations from friends because I had no money, and sleepless nights worrying about the pile of bills stacked on the old kitchen table. They all returned like a silent film. I went hungry, so their wallets were always full. And I kept promising myself, there will be time for me later. That later never came. Every single dollar I saved went to Michael and Samantha. I remember vividly that winter night, my hand shaking as I gave Samantha the tuition envelope, hoping she'd let me visit her dorm. But she just shook her head. No, Mom, my friends are here. It's not convenient. At the same time, on Instagram, she showed off a new handbag, bought with that very money. Then came the engagement party. I skipped meals for a week, working extra night shifts to save $5,530, and baked a cake with my own hands to bring. But Helen pushed it to a corner, saying just loud enough for me to hear, "We already have a gourmet cake." That night, Michael posted a picture on social media. Memorable night with family and friends. I was nowhere in the frame, as if I never existed. While I was eating a sad sandwich on a cold stone bench, Samantha was showing off a new purse on Instagram, paid for with the money I sent for school expenses. It wasn't just her. Even my older sister called to ask for money to fix her house, then forgot to thank me, treating me like an obligation. I didn't keep score. I thought this was just what a mother had to do, due to blind, stupid love. But the worst thing wasn't the sacrifice itself. It was the moment I realized my own silence taught them how to treat me this way. And you know what? The most expensive lesson I was about to teach them wouldn't cost me a cent. And that lesson I was about to teach them with an action they will never forget. An action that rendered that watch on Zoom email meaningless. That email, though, made me feel like an expired transaction. So I canceled the final payment, $31,230. As if I had a shelf life and it was over, I chose to set a boundary. Looking at the old pair of shoes Michael left behind, I thought, if only I had taught him to appreciate things sooner. That afternoon, I met Linda, my cleaning friend of over 20 years. In her warm kitchen, with the faint scent of toasted bread, I told her about the email, about Michael, about the money I had canceled. Linda placed her hand firmly on my shoulder and said with conviction, "Marjorie, you've done too much. Now is the time to live for yourself." Her words were like a soft breeze, yet strong enough to make me stand tall. The neighbors used to say, "All mothers sacrifice. Why is Marjorie keeping score?" But I shook my head, refusing to endure any longer. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. But I knew I couldn't forever be the one in the background, always silent, always paying, always enduring. When I got home, I opened my old laptop. Michael's email lit up the screen. I didn't read it again. I closed the laptop and looked out the window where the snow was falling silently. But there was one thing I couldn't know. My decision to be silent that day would become the opening shot of a war I never saw coming. The wind whistled through the door crack, a reminder that this winter I had to keep myself warm. Have you ever made a sacrifice that went completely unseen? At the cleaning job, Linda stopped by, holding a hot cup of tea. She always remembered my birthday and brought tea whenever I was sad. She instantly recognized my distress. "You look completely drained," she whispered, placing the hot cup on the old wooden table. I wanted to tell her my son had just excluded me from his own wedding, but I just smiled and said I hadn't slept well. She didn't press me. That small kindness, the tea, the silence nearly made me cry. Amidst the chaos in my mind, I realized that I still existed, that I still had value, however quiet. During my lunch break, my phone vibrated. Michael was calling. His name shone brightly on the screen like a beacon. I didn't answer. Text messages and voicemails quickly followed, pleading, "Mom, talk to me, don't ruin everything." Another voicemail, Michael's voice harsh. "You're making me look bad in front of Rachel's boss. Why are you being so selfish?" I didn't listen. I wasn't ready to face him. I sat there, sipping my tea, a deep thought forming. Maybe it was time to stop answering him entirely. It was time to stop being the background for his life when he wouldn't allow me on the stage. That afternoon, I decided to change everything for the entire family. I didn't scream or beg. I chose an action far more powerful. A decision that would end my role as the ATM forever. Enough was enough. After my shift, I didn't go home right away. I walked a few blocks to the bank. Mr. David, the branch manager, had helped me open my children's savings accounts. He always called me by my first name affectionately. "Mrs. Ellis," he smiled, standing to shake my hand. "How can I help you today?" I sat down across from him, placing my bag on the floor. My voice was calm, almost too cold. "I want to cancel a wire transfer," I said. He blinked. "The one for the Sonoma Valley venue?" "Yes, that one." Mr. David hesitated. "There might be a cancellation fee, but why do you want to cancel?" "Circumstances have changed," I replied, offering no explanation. He checked something on his computer. Fortunately, the funds haven't been transferred yet. Just in time. He paused, looking up at me. Are you sure, Mrs. Ellis? $31,230 is a substantial amount. I nodded. Absolutely. $31,230 was the next installment I planned to send, which, added to the $36,450 already spent, totaled $67,680 for a wedding I was excluded from. I signed the paperwork and left the bank without hesitation. At the same time, in a coffee shop, Linda was telling her husband about me. Can you believe it? Marjorie, the kindest woman I know, finally snapped. She just canceled all the money for her son's wedding? Her husband looked at her, astonished. My God, really? What happened? Linda shook her head, her expression a mix of pity and firm resolution. A child stepped on his mother's heart once too often. I have never seen that look in her eyes. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was the absolute stillness of an unshakable decision. I'm so proud of her. If I was only an option to my children, I would no longer make them my priority. But I knew that wasn't enough. I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer, asking to remove my children from my will. Signing the documents, I felt a sense of pride, as if I had successfully protected my own dignity. By the bank counter, I noticed a travel magazine with a picture of the turquoise Maldives. For the first time, I thought, I deserve this. For the first time, I felt liberated, as if I had shed a weight I had carried for too long. When I got home, I saw 9 missed calls from Michael, 2 from Samantha. Mom, please don't do this, Michael's voicemail begged. My sister texted, Marjorie, how can you be so excessive canceling the wedding money? I didn't reply. I immediately turned off my phone. Less than 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was Michael. I took a deep breath and answered. His voice was no longer pleading but full of anger and disappointment. You really just killed my future, you know that? I remained silent. He yelled, That money wasn't just for the wedding. Rachel and I were using it for the down payment on an apartment, the one near her dad's company. Now everything is ruined. Are you satisfied? Are you happy knowing you just destroyed my dream of a real home? His words were like a hammer blow. I sat heavily on the chair. It turned out it wasn't just a wedding. It was a long-term plan, and I was the final guarantor bank. This brutal truth didn't cause me additional pain. Instead, it solidified my resolve into ice. I had done the right thing. The truth about the apartment made everything clearer than ever. But was this the final secret? In the kitchen, I took out a bottle of wine I had been saving since Thanksgiving. I hadn't opened it because Michael had canceled his visit at the last minute. Busy with work, he'd said. I poured a glass of wine, went to the porch, and sat under the faint sunset. The cold wind howled, but I didn't tremble. The wedding was beginning to collapse. No venue, no catering, no band. Michael texted, Mom, the wedding is ruined. I didn't reply. I sipped the wine, feeling a stillness for the first time in my life. Have you ever chosen yourself over others? Remember, never let yourself become an option for the person you consider your everything. If you don't set boundaries, they will define your value, and that value is always 0. Snow fell silently outside the window. The wind howled through the crack in the door. Everything seemed to stand still. Then the memories came flooding back like a tidal wave. The birthdays I prepared alone. The holidays I waited for my children, but no one called. The small sacrifices no one ever noticed. The new coat I never dared to buy. The 10-year-old bicycle I still used. The vacation I constantly postponed. I thought about Helen, Rachel's mother, a person who knew nothing about Michael. Yet her opinion mattered more. A person who decided that family meant cutting out the one who had supported Michael through every hardship of his life. I remembered the email Michael sent. No greeting, no thanks, treating it as obvious that I should watch his wedding via Zoom. Finally, I thought about myself, not just as a mother, but as a woman. What did I want? Peace, dignity, a life that didn't revolve around being useful to others. That evening, around 9, the doorbell rang. I intended to ignore it, but curiosity won. I opened the door. It was Jamie, Michael's friend, sleeves rolled up, looking completely flustered. He was fidgeting, holding his phone like a shield. "Mrs. Ellis," he said, stepping in before I could even reply. "Why aren't you answering?" "Michael is panicking." I closed the door softly. "A greeting first," I said. He sighed, pacing back and forth. "Michael says you're not coming to the wedding anymore, that you're making things difficult." I chuckled. "Difficult? For not attending the wedding I was cut out of?" He looked awkward. "Rachel's family is paying for the bulk of the costs. You know how traditional they are," Jamie added, lowering his voice. "Helen said you were destroying their family tradition. Michael wants a lavish wedding to save face with Rachel's boss, even though his mother is behind every expense." "Michael needs this party for a promotion," Jamie insisted. "Rachel's boss at the company really values image." I raised an eyebrow. "Tradition? I already paid $36,450, and I plan to pay another $31,230. That's not tradition. That's injustice. I brought a homemade cake to the engagement party. Starved myself to pay $55.30, but Helen pushed it to a corner, and my threadbare cardigan looked lost among the affluent guests." He stopped cold. "Wait, you were going to send another $31,230? "Yes," I said, sipping my tea. "But not anymore." Jamie's face went pale. Everyone was counting on that money. The venue, the catering, the band. "That is no longer my problem," I stated. His voice went up. "Of course it's your problem. Michael is your son. And I am his mother," I said softly. "The mother who was told to stay home and watch the wedding via Zoom." He ran a hand through his hair, clearly exasperated. "You always make everything about you. You're being so selfish." And that was enough. In that moment, I would not endure anymore. I stood up straight, mentally towering over him. "Get out of my house right now!" My voice wasn't a shout, but a whisper that was sharper than any knife. "Did you hear me, Jamie?" "Get out!" "No," I said, my voice firm but gentle. "I gave you all I had. I won't be the villain in a story I wrote with love." Jamie stood there for another second. Then he turned and walked out. The door closed softly behind him, but the feeling was louder than any slam. I stood there, silent. That night, my phone lit up. Samantha was calling FaceTime. "What are you doing? Is the wedding falling apart? Are you happy now? Why are you turning everything into a tragedy movie?" I looked straight into her eyes. The tragedy movie started when my own child cut me out of the picture. If my presence is negotiable, so is my effort. I hung up, not in anger, just refusing to be framed anymore. The next morning, I called my realtor and started the process of selling the house. Immediately, I got a text from Michael. "You're selling the house? Fine. I'll need my share of the money to rent a new apartment closer to work." Samantha wrote, "Selling the house? Don't forget I need $5,000 to upgrade my investment portfolio." They didn't even ask where I would live. They just calculated the remaining money. The neighbors gossiped. Marjorie abandoned her children. How selfish. I thought they have no idea how much I gave away. The wedding completely unraveled. No flowers, no rings, no catering. Michael texted, "Mom, why did you ruin everything?" Samantha wrote, "Mom, you can't abandon your family." My sister called, her voice full of blame. "Marjorie, why are you walking out on the whole family like this?" I didn't answer. I sipped my tea, watching the snow fall, knowing I had chosen my dignity. They thought my selling the house was the end. But in reality, it was only the beginning of a plan I never thought I'd have the courage to execute. Have you ever been undervalued by your own family? That freedom felt so strange. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, like a layer of ice covering everything. And it was in that profound stillness that I could hear the sound of the coming storm most clearly, not from outside, but from the silent phone resting on the table. The next morning, my phone screen showed 38 missed calls, dozens of messages from Michael. His tone shifted rapidly, from pleading, "Mom, please don't destroy everything," to furious, "How can you be this selfish?" And finally to blame. "Rachel's family is furious. They said this proves they were right about you." It peaked when he posted a social media rant. "Mom ruins wedding. Unbelievable selfishness." I scrolled past it. my heart not registering a single ripple. I smiled, sipping my tea. Of course he didn't understand. Michael grew up with my sacrifice woven so tightly into his life that he never had to ask where stability came from, where safety was, where the rock-solid foundation lay. He thought everything would always be there, that I would always be there, but not this time. That morning, as I reviewed the paperwork for the house sale, an email popped into my inbox. Subject line, "Please don't destroy our wedding." I opened it, expecting nothing. "Mom," he wrote, "I know you're upset about the Zoom thing, but you're overreacting. We've lost the venue deposit, and if we don't pay the rest by tonight, the catering will be canceled too. Rachel's family is extremely angry. They said you were completely non-negotiable. Please don't do this. We can talk about you attending the ceremony, but we need the money first. No apology. No remorse. Just a chilling negotiation. Money in exchange for my presence. Negotiate? As if my existence was an item for sale, its value dependent on my generosity. I drove to the cemetery and placed chrysanthemums on my husband's grave. Darling, our son sees me as a bank, but I'm choosing dignity. I'm selling the house, and I'm going to live for me. I left, the snow falling, my resolve firm. I didn't reply. I closed the email and returned to the house papers. Samantha texted, "Mom, why are you abandoning the family? His wedding is ruined." My sister sent a frantic message. "Marjorie, how can you be so selfish, tearing the family apart like this?" I didn't respond. The messages were like small cuts, reminding me the wound was still fresh. I worried about the day I wouldn't see my grandchildren, but I had to protect my dignity. I did not reply. The wedding completely imploded. No flowers, no rings, no catering, no band. Michael lost his promotion opportunity because Rachel's family turned their backs on him. Helen called me selfish. My neighbor Susan advised, "Marjorie, children make mistakes sometimes. You should forgive." Linda called, worried about my loneliness. "Marjorie, are you okay?" I answered, "I am free." The neighbors whispered I was selfish, that all mothers sacrifice for their children, but I didn't waver. I shrugged, sipped my tea, and watched the snow outside. My house sold for $425,000. I moved to a retirement community, transferring $150,000 to a senior care fund. I pay $6,750 a month for a room overlooking the ocean, where I am finally finding myself. I started taking painting classes, tending flowers, and making new friends. I watched American rom-coms in the communal lounge and laughed out loud for the first time in 5 years. For the first time, I was living for me. My phone still lit up. Michael, Samantha pleading voicemails. I didn't listen. The wind still whistled through the crack in the door, but I felt warm. Dignity was the fire I lit for myself. Have you ever chosen dignity over sacrifice? Around noon, Clara came over to my table. "Lunch?" she offered. "There's a new bakery that just opened." I almost said no, like I always did. But something in me had shifted. Maybe it was the clarity that came after a full day of standing my ground. Or maybe I just wanted to be somewhere I wasn't needed or judged. I nodded. I'd like that. Over sandwiches, she talked about her grandkids and how exhausting but wonderful it was to watch them. Her eyes were genuinely kind and gentle. She paused, speaking softly. "Forgive me, Marjorie, but you look lighter." I was surprised by my own openness. I told her everything, about Michael, the email, the wedding, the money, and what I had done. When I finished, she didn't offer judgment. She didn't try to fix anything. She just said, "Sometimes love means setting the hardest boundaries, especially with the people you sacrifice the most for." She reached out and gently squeezed my hand. "I think you did the right thing." For the first time in a very long time, I believed it too. When I got back to my table, I saw more calls and texts, but I didn't answer. I didn't have to, because for the first time, my silence was the dignity I chose. That evening when I got home, it was already twilight. The porch light clicked on automatically, casting a yellowish glow over the scene. Everything was quiet, peaceful. But that peace was shattered by a figure huddled on the front steps. I slowed my pace, wary. Then the figure stood up, and the light illuminated a young woman's face. A face that was strange, yet strangely familiar. In a flash, memory rushed back. Weekends filled with laughter, the smell of fresh-baked cookies in the kitchen, and the image of a brown-haired girl who always called me affectionately Mom Number 2. It was Anna. Michael's high school best friend, a girl I hadn't seen in years. She stood there looking awkward, brushing dust off her shirt. "Mrs. Ellis," Anna began, her voice small and hesitant. I'm sorry for showing up like this." "It's all right," I replied, opening the door. "Would you like some tea?" She followed me into the kitchen, her eyes scanning the walls, searching for ghosts of the past. I put the kettle on, waiting silently. "Did Michael send you?" I asked, my voice even. Anna shook her head, her face serious. "No, actually, he doesn't know I'm here." She looked me dead in the eye, as if weighing something monumental. "Mrs. Ellis, there's a truth I think you deserve to know. I accidentally overheard Michael and Rachel arguing, and—" She hesitated. "And Rachel said that the idea to ask you to watch via Zoom was her mother's idea, Helen's. But Michael didn't object. He just said, 'Fine, it's easier if my mother stays home anyway. Then I don't have to worry about her accidentally saying anything that doesn't fit in with my fiancé's guests.'" The room seemed to darken. It wasn't just an unemotional email. It was calculation. It was complicity. My own son had actively consented to pushing me to the margin. Anna continued, her voice full of regret. "I know this is awful, but I thought you deserved the truth. Michael wasn't just passive. He actively agreed to the exclusion." I looked at Anna, feeling nothing but a strange, profound stillness. The final truth was exposed. "Thank you," I said. "Now I understand. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Ellis." "You don't need to apologize," I replied. We stood in silence for a moment. Two women connected by a difficult truth. Love sometimes has its limits. Sometimes you have to leave to truly be seen. Anna didn't stay long. She didn't argue. She thanked me, gave me a light hug, and walked back out into the night. My neighbor asked the next morning, "Did Anna come asking for money?" I answered, "No, I held my boundary." And I finally closed the door with the version of myself who had overcome. The snow was falling outside, but I felt warm. I checked the Maldives flight tickets, and a smile spread across my face. The retirement community awaited me with flowers, painting, and new friends. I listened to jazz on the radio in the lounge, swaying to the music, truly free for the first time. My sister texted, "Anna came over and you didn't help her? What is wrong with you?" I didn't answer. Dignity was the light I chose. That light led me to a place I never dared to dream of. And there, I discovered the best version of myself, the one that years of sacrifice had stolen. Have you ever set a boundary to find your light? Did you think the story ended there, with me finding peace? Life usually has its own way of closing a circle. And my circle wouldn't truly close until I faced the results of all those choices, a year later. The wedding, as you know, didn't happen the way they wanted. Still, they rushed to find another option. But every place was booked or way too expensive. They didn't have the money I had promised. According to Jamie, they held a small ceremony a few weeks later in the backyard, just a handful of Rachel's family members. Jamie said Michael was quiet after the ceremony, as if realizing that his mother's absence had made the happy day incomplete. Samantha texted, "Mom skipped the small ceremony. The family is torn apart." Then later, "Mom, I was wrong. Trying to figure things out is so hard. I wasn't invited, and this time, I didn't need to be." A few weeks later, Michael sent a long, emotional email. It was half apology, half justification. I thought back to the engagement party, the homemade cake pushed aside, my worn cardigan, the $5,130 from my night shifts. Michael's handwriting, "Mom, I was wrong. I took you for granted." Rachel wrote, "Mrs. Ellis, I'm sorry. I read them and I saved them. I wasn't angry. I was simply letting go." That act of letting go brought a strange, crystal-clear peace. It was time to close the old book, not out of spite, but because I deserved a new chapter. For the first time, I woke up without worrying about what anyone needed, without the guilt that masqueraded as love. I set new rules for myself. If I wasn't important to them, my effort wasn't either. I worked out, read books, and took painting classes. I devoured self-help books, just like Oprah told me. I brought a cake to the retirement community potluck. My friends praised it, and I laughed genuinely. I had dinner with friends who saw me, not what I could provide. I learned the crucial lesson. You are not required to burn yourself to keep other people warm. I only wish I'd taught my kids appreciation and set my boundaries sooner, so I wouldn't have been taken for granted. I packed my bags for the Maldives, visualizing the waves, just being myself. On the white sand, I let go of an old family photo, releasing the past with a gentle goodbye. A few days before leaving, I took that old brown cardigan to a donation bin. Watching it fall into the box, I felt no regret. I felt like I was shedding an old skin. In the Maldives, I bought a new silk robe, ocean blue. It was light and warm in a completely different way. My sister texted, "You didn't show up for the small ceremony. You tore the family apart." I didn't reply. The retirement community embraced me, with flowers, art, and new friends. Ellen learned to love herself from me after her own children took her for granted. Henry told me, "Marjorie, that smile. You finally found yourself." Clara said, "You inspired me." I set boundaries with my son. Clara added, "Thanks to you, he's more independent now." The neighbors still gossiped, "Marjorie is selfish." I didn't flinch. A year later, Michael, Rachel, and Samantha brought their new baby to the community. Michael said, "Mom, Grandma needs to meet her grandson." He apologized. "Being a father, I understand the struggle you faced. Raising us as a single mom." Rachel and Samantha nodded, their eyes showing genuine remorse. I held my grandson and whispered, "Grandma loves you." I told them, "I forgive you, but the boundary stays." They left, and I smiled. A mother who sacrificed her entire life was excluded from her own son's wedding for not being sophisticated enough. She chose dignity instead of continuing to be an ATM. If you have ever felt like a walking wallet in your own family, you are not alone. Subscribe to this channel right now to join a community where your dignity is non-negotiable. Show us you are here by commenting, "I am worthy." If this story resonated with you, or comment, "I am free," to celebrate the courage it takes to reclaim your respect. Every comment is a virtual hug, lighting the hope for those learning to love themselves. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who needs to hear it today, because understanding can start with just one story.